which starts out with a dvar halacha, and then tries to show how the halacha, when transferred to the value system of Torah, to what we call hagadah, blends together and makes a seamless whole, which I always believe is the way to look at Torah and to look at what Chazal said. So I had this dvar halacha about a subject called dover hagorem l'momon, k'momon dome, something which leads to money, even though it's not money yet, but it's considered to be money. And the example was, let's say you gave me a warehouse full of chametz that I should store for you. So I am either a shomer chinam or a shomer socher, and Pesach comes, and since the chametz was in my possession, and I had it, I should have sold the chametz, but I didn't. So now it becomes chametz she'ovar alav Pesach, chametz that went through Pesach in the possession of a Jew, and therefore, according to the halacha, it becomes worthless. It's asur b'hana'ah. You can't have any pleasure from it. And after Pesach, I say, okay, come pick up your chametz. Here it is. So physically, nothing happened here. And I returned what I took from you, and every piece of it is still present here. But in halachic terms, I took something of value and I gave you back nothing. And because of the guy gave you back nothing, you will have to spend money in order to replace it, to replace what was in the warehouse. So that's called a dover hagorem l'momon. There's no damages in the thing itself, but because of extraneous circumstances or halachic circumstances, it's going to cost you money. So am I obligated? Am I not obligated? How much? And that was the idea that I was going to develop. Comes the coronavirus, so I didn't think that really would excite anybody here. And so I've been rethinking the matter, especially here in my daughter's house for the last few weeks. So I'm going to give you what I think is an important system of ideas that we can carry to the Pesach Seder, especially in this difficult and trying time, challenging time, but it's also a time that we can grow from. It's a time that would give us perspective, a time that we are able to see life the way it really is, and not the way we often portray it to be, which is usually a fantasy. So in the Haggadah we will read, Ram Gamliel Omer, the great Ram Gamliel says, there are three Ram Gamliels. There's Ram Gamliel Azokein, the elder, and Ram Gamliel of Yavne, who is the Ram Gamliel that's quoted in the Haggadah. And then there's Ram Gamliel, the third one, who is the son of Rebbe of the Yehuda Anosi. So the Ram Gamliel span almost 3 centuries. So this is the middle Ram Gamliel. The Ram Gamliel that saw the destruction of the temple, and the Ram Gamliel that eventually reconstituted the Sanhedrin and began the drive that would enable the Jewish people to survive after such a great tragedy. So he said, Kol Shalom Shlosha Dvorim Elu B'Pesach Lo Yotze Yedeicho Boso. Anyone that does not recite and explain these 3 concepts on the night of the Seder, when we have this mitzvah of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, of telling people about the Mitzrayim, if you don't explain these 3 things, you have not really fulfilled your obligation. And these are the three things which we all know. Pesach, Matzah, Umoror. Pesach, Al Shumah. What do we explain on Pesach? So we explain the story of Mitzrayim. We explain the fact that we were slaves in Egypt, and the Lord took us out from Egypt, and that there was a plague. And now we understand very clearly what a plague means. It's no longer a matter of fiction, right? Makas B'choros, we see it in front of your eyes. You don't have to be so much a believer as a realist. And we also see what the Torah said, don't go outside. Because given Shenit the Rishus Lamashchis, since permission was given for the plague to take place, so Eino Mavchin Ben Tzadik LaRosha. The virus is non-judgmental. He doesn't know whether you're pious or not pious, whether you voted Gimel or not. The virus is really an equal opportunity killer. So don't go outside. And the Rebbeinu Shalom will help, as he helped us in Mitzrayim, that as Botenu Hitzil, our families, we were saved, and we were able to leave Egypt. So I have often thought, Pesach, it's a remarkable story here. But part of the story is, how did we get there? We weren't born in Egypt. We weren't supposed to be in Egypt. Avraham Avinu went to Egypt and he left. Yitzchak Avinu wasn't even allowed to come to Egypt. But the Yaakov Abona of Yordu Mitzrayim, Yaakov and his sons went down to Egypt. So let's examine that. Why did they go down to Egypt? Avraham went down because there was a famine. Yitzchak wanted to go down because also there was a famine. We do not read of any famine in the time of Yaakov. So why did he go down? And especially, Yaakov always longs to return to Eretz Yisrael. The 22 years that he's by Lavan, he's always praying to come home. V'shavti v'sholem u'beisovi. Then, Hashem li lalakim, to me that's the sign of God that I'm going to live in Eretz Yisrael. Vayovo Yaakov Sholem, and when Yaakov comes only, he's Sholem, only is he whole when he comes to Eretz Yisrael. So then what is going on here? Yaakov Abon of Yordan Mitzrayim. Yaakov and his children went down to Egypt. Why'd they go to Egypt? So let's look at the story. They went to Egypt because the brothers couldn't get along. They couldn't tolerate each other for whatever holy reasons are involved, and all the reasons for intolerance are holy. No one starts out in life says, I'm going to be an evil person. But then we develop ideas, we develop our own personalities, and we develop our own ego, we develop our own opinions, we develop our own policies. The world has to look a certain way. I want to make it look that way. I know better. So the brothers don't get along. And 10 of the brothers feel that number 11, is really a problem. Because he's a nonconformist. He dresses differently. Their father made it worse. He gave him the shirt to wear, the tunic. And he's always complaining. He's always saying they did wrong, they did this, they did that. And they're not willing to take it any longer. Now, Eina Mikra Yotze Midei Pshuta. one of the basic rules, and when you look in the Torah, is that the Torah means what it says. There was once a famous anecdote told about a great rabbi. So they asked him, why did it say by Yaakov Avinu that the Moshe will give him beged lilbosh, he'll give him a garment to wear, lechem lecho, bread to eat. It should say, God will give me a beged and God will give me a lechem. Why do you have to say that bread that I'm going to eat, garments that I'm going to wear? So the Rav said, which will reveal his opinions, he said, he said there'll be a Chassidish Rebbe that'll come and say that beged doesn't mean beged, and lechem doesn't mean lechem. These are all high spiritual things. So he said, so meanwhile Yaakov will walk around naked and starve to death. So therefore he said, no, beged lilbosh. I have a garment that I have to wear. And lechem, I have to have bread to eat. Let's talk about that. Then we talk about all the highfalutin ideas. The Torah means what it says. So the Torah says the brothers sold him into slavery, whom they did not like, justifiably or not. It makes no difference. That's the story. And they sold him as a slave. Then they regretted that. They saw their father's anguish. They were not able to comfort him. So then they began a pursuit of what happened here. And meanwhile, this brother Yosef rises to greatness by a series of events that only heaven can ordain. And the brothers are forced to face him again. And the brothers now admit their guilt. We are guilty of what we did to our brother. He begged us not to do it, and we didn't listen. That's why all of these troubles came upon us. Now the Torah is clear that there's cause and effect. There are consequences to human behavior. It's not random stories. It's not it just so happens this way. And the brothers who were great people, Shiftei Kor, they understood that. And therefore, the story unfolds with Binyamin, and then finally Yosef reveals himself, and Yosef brings his father down to Egypt. V'Yaakov u'bonav yordu Mitzrayma. Now they went down to Egypt in hope and in joy and in the feeling, the family would be reunited. And they said, they told Yaakov, Yosef will take care of you. We're going to live in Eretz Goshen, and you'll see your grandchildren, and you'll be able to learn Torah with them. And it said the golden years. But Yaakov knows instinctively that even though everything is good, it's not so good. And therefore, he makes them take an oath. Don't bury me in Egypt. Don't let me remain in Egypt. Take me back to the Moras HaMachpelah. Take me back to Hebron. Take me back to Abraham and Sarah and Yitzchak and Rivka and Leah. Take me back. I don't belong here. And Yosef exerts every effort possible to fulfill his father's wishes. The Pharaoh acquiesces. And then Yosef emulates his father. He says also, Al Nosik Bereni b'Mitzrayim, don't bury me in Egypt. The Rabboni Shalom will get you out of Egypt. This is not where we belong. Elokim Fakod Yifkod Eschem. And when he does that, Valisha Mazatz Mosayim Yizeh Yitchem, take me out with you. Hundreds of years pass. Whatever the count is, 210, 430, whatever, that makes no difference. It's hundreds of years past. And the Jewish people became Egyptians. Because you live in Egypt centuries, so you're an Egyptian. Even if you're a slave, you're an Egyptian. And the Torah says in its magnificent way of how to give a narrative, how to look at history. Vayokom melech chodosh al Mitzrayim asher lo yadayas Yosef. The Egyptians don't know Yosef. There was a time that they knew him. There was a time they were grateful for him. There was a time when, the Jews are living in Goshen. As long as the Jews are there, we're in good shape. It's God's people. And now, Yosef, they don't know the whole story. And not only doesn't the king know the story, the Jewish people don't know the story. Asher lo yodas Yosef is not just the king, the Jewish people don't know the story. And therefore, when Moshe comes and he tells them, I'm going to take you out, they say, hagadol, don't talk to us. And later, even when they're free, they will say, Nitna Rosh V'Lashuva Mitzrayim, we're going back to Egypt, we're Egyptians. And when that happens, Asher lo yodas Yosef. And we see that when the Jewish people left Egypt, so the Torah tells us, so everybody was taking gold and silver and utensils and clothing. They were taking reparations for the hundreds of years of slavery. So everybody's grabbing. You can imagine, right? The Chofetz Chaim had a great mashal that he would say, that he was once in the street, in the marketplace, and a farmer was conducting his wagon full of apples, and the horse that was pulling the wagon bolted, and the wagon turned over, and there were apples all over the street. So everybody was grabbing poor farmer's apples, and he was standing on the road and shouting and crying, and a man came over to him and said, stop crying, you grab too. Take your apples. That's really the story here. So everybody is taking gold and silver. But Shlomo Melech wrote centuries later, Chacham leiv yikach mitzvot. Person who's really wise, he took mitzvahs, he grabbed the right apple. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. Everybody's leaving with money, and Moshe goes and looks for Yosef's body. He remembers that the Yishbiyah B'nai Yisrael. That there's a shvuah, there's an oath that you're going to take me out. And therefore, the Aron of Yosef was removed from Egypt and is buried in Shechem until today. There's Kever Yosef Hatzadik. So, Pesach reminds us not how we got out only, but how did we get in? What happened here? And that's a lesson for generations. And certainly for our generation. How did we get here? Yeah, people have all sorts of answers. When you put all the answers together, it makes absolutely no sense. You told me Ben Gurion got us here, or Herzl. They are instruments. They are people through whom the Lord, so to speak, affects His will. But that's not how we got here. We got here because this is our home. This is where we know we belong. Ashbeya Ishbeya as B'nai Yisrael. This is our oath. Don't bury me somewhere else. Don't tell me I'm Egyptian when I'm not. And that's the whole struggle of the Jewish people throughout the ages, is to retain our identity, to know who we are, where we came from, what we're supposed to be. And that's the night of Pesach. Pesach al-Shumah. The Rebbe Shalom took us out. Tell them the story. How did this happen? How did we get there? How did we leave? So therefore, we'll have a sense to know who we are. And if we know who we are, so then we behave differently. We only behave badly because we don't have any self-awareness. We don't think it counts. But the Torah does not take its foot off the accelerator. The Torah is insistent. And therefore, there are many, many ways that the Lord teaches us, and we're in the middle of a teaching lesson now. I said it in my brilliant lecture to the educators. I said, whatever happens here, and it'll all go away, God willing, quickly, and then it's not going to be the same. It's not going to be what it was 3-4 months ago, no matter what. Can't be. We have witnessed a sea change. And how will we react to it? That will be our challenge. And how do we rebuild it? And what form will it take? Those are the questions that should face us. It's Pesach. What is Pesach? Haushumah. Why? Because I know the whole story. And then he said matzah. Matzah zushon olchim. Matzah that we eat on the night of the Seder, the mitzvah, the kazayis, the 2 kazayisim, the 3 kazayisim, the 4 kazayisim. Why? So matzah has in itself a few unique characteristics. First of all, it tastes like cardboard. The second characteristic is that chometz is the mashu. Everything else in life is proportional. Things are relative. And things are good compared to what? I'm quarantined in this house with my wonderful daughter and son-in-law. I've been a pest for them for 17 days already. Believe me, they're praying for this to get over with. Now, I'm bored, and I'm boring, and there's not much that can be done here. But it's wonderful. Relative to what? God forbid, to being outside, to being exposed, Rahman al-Islam. So all of life is relative. If we realize that, so we would realize that good is also worth something, even if it's not perfect. Even if it's not, part of the disease of the Western world is that things have to be perfect. Society, our leaders have to be perfect. Everything has to be perfect. It's not that way at all. I always tell the story about the family that had a son, and for the first 5 years of his life, he didn't utter a word. And the parents naturally were beside themselves with worry. And they took him to all of the great therapists and all of the great doctors and all of the great experts, and nobody could fathom why. Because there was nothing wrong with him mentally, audio, he could hear, and everything is perfect. So why can't he talk? And then one day he's eating breakfast, and he says to his mother, the porridge is too hot. Well, the mother went wild. And she called up the father, and she said, Johnny spoke and everything, And then when it all calmed down, she said to him, why didn't you say anything until now? He said, until now it wasn't too hot. Well, that's us, right? Relative. Chometz has no relativity to it. Mashahu, the smallest amount is already no good. Matzah that has 1 grain of chometz in it is not matzah. And that describes our soul. Our soul is not relative. Our soul seeks perfection. Our soul demands it. Our soul wants matzah, and that there be no masha chometz in it. There's a great discussion in the Gemara. One of the advantages that I have living here is that I'm able to learn with my son-in-law, Rabbi Moshe Teitelbaum, who is a great Talmid Chacham. And so we were discussing, we're learning the subject matter in the Gemara Psachim about matzah ashira. Rich matzah. In other words, matzah that's not mixed with water, but it's mixed with honey, it's mixed with oil, it's mixed, the discussion is mixed with milk, it's mixed with other liquids, it's mixed with fruit juice. It's what we lovingly call egg matzah. And there's a whole discussion in the Gemara, there are 4 different opinions. And then in the Rishonim, there's discussion, and the Achronim, and it's a machlokas lahalocha, the Ramah makes the compromise. Some say that the matzah ashira becomes chometz faster than it's unable to be watched. Some say it never becomes chometz. So because of that, the Ramah made the compromise that matzah ashira is only for older people. I don't have a definition yet of older people. And for those that can't digest well, etc., etc. But certainly you can't use matzah ashira to be yotzei the mitzvah of achilas matzah on the Seder night. The Seder night you can't use that. The question is, the rest of the Pesach, can you eat egg matzah or not? Most people are making fine, good. But it's not the matzah's mitzvah. And there's a great value lesson there. You can't improve on matzah. Matzah isn't to your taste. Matzah is what the Revelation says is matzah, not what you say is matzah. And we live in a time of matzah ashira. At least we did until this Pesach. Well, people didn't ask, how are you going to celebrate Pesach? What is it going to mean to you? People say, where are you going to go for Pesach? The Pesach was an industry of hundreds of millions of dollars. And I understand it. I also had to, because of reasons, my wife couldn't make Pesach anymore. We couldn't go to our children. So I also went to a hotel once. But my friends, that's not Pesach. That's matzah ashira. It's water, but you can't be yotzei the mitzvah with it. That's not what it is. That's not what it was meant to be. And a president of the United States who never expected to have to face a crisis like this, and whom the United States never expected to have as a president to get him out of such a crisis. I mean, Yosef Bashamayim Yitzchak, Hashem Yulag Lomo, that God's mockery of us is so apparent in every facet of this. But the President of the United States said very accurately, he said, I receive thousands of letters every day from people who say, thank you, Mr. President. You have forced me to reacquaint myself with my family. I'm home. I'm home for the children. I'm home for my wife. Could be that my wife doesn't appreciate that. But nevertheless, I'm home. I've reacquainted myself. I look at things differently. And that's when I say when this is over, it's going to be a different world. And because of that, therefore, the Matzah Ashira has to be relegated to its proper place. It should not dominate Pesach. It should not be the definition of Pesach. It should not be what it is really never intended to be. I'm old-fashioned. The good old days in Chicago in the 1940s. So, first of all, there were no Pesach foods. So, 3 times a day you had matzah. And you had meat and potatoes. And if you didn't have meat, you had chicken and potatoes. And if you didn't have chicken, you had potatoes. But that was Pesach. And the big tiyul on Pesach was that we went to see the Chicago Cubs lose on Chol Hamoed. And that was our enjoyment. That was Pesach. I want to tell you that when I went to the yeshiva, we had shir on Chol Hamoed Pesach. There was no Beit Azmanim. There was no year off Chedishnis and then come back. On Chol Hamoed we had shiurim. It was a different Pesach. Sorry, the Zoom got lost. Just 1 second for technical adjustment there. Okay. Sorry, is it all right now? Okay. So that was on Pesach.
Okay.
So that was our Pesach. It was not Matzah Ashira. But we thought Pesach was the greatest. I remember my Seder till today. And there was no reward for asking Manishtana, and there was no reward for the Afikoman. And what a Seder we have. So, why do we eat matzah? Because that's the way it's supposed to be. We'll get back to simplicity. We'll get back to less. And we'll be happier. Because it must be admitted that in spite of all of the advantages and advances of Western civilization and of our ways of life and of the luxuries that we take for granted, I don't think that people are much happier today than they were 70, 80 years ago when none of these things existed. And the truth of the words of the rabbis, Marbe Nechosim, Marbe Dago, never was truer than it is today. My father had no portfolio, and therefore if the market went down 30%, he was not perturbed. But times change, and there are lessons to be learned. Finally, why do we eat more? Because of the fact that life has bitterness to it. It is inescapable. to raise a generation that never will think it will experience failure, does a great disservice. I think one of the great disservices in education today is no child left behind. Nobody ever fails a course. What are you talking about? One of the great lessons in life is to fail a course, and then you pick yourself up and do something. Sheva yipol tzadik v'kom. The righteous person falls, so then how he gets up, then he becomes someone. You're never supposed to fall. How can you deal with things? It's impossible. And therefore, the Seder night, there's a mitzvah to eat more. Our mitzvah now is midrabanan, whatever, but you have to eat the more. Now you can temper it with charosas. There's a way to temper life. But you cannot expect that life should not have more in it. I remember when I was in law school, a long time ago. So, that was pretty good. In fact, in the first semester in law school, I won the prize for being the outstanding student of the law school that I attended. So I was really full of myself. So in the second semester, I took a course, and I relied on my memory and on my usual brilliance. And when it came time to take the midterm exam, I got a 73. I had never gotten less than a 95 on any exam till then. I came home and I told my parents, and I wept. And my father said to me, "You'll get a 95 in this course too, but it was very important that you get a 73. Because when you get the 73, you know that you're not. You don't escape these things. And that it's only through failure that a person becomes great. And it's only through not fulfilling one's ambitions that one has a balanced view of life and of one's position in life. So we eat more because it was bitter. We don't sugarcoat it. We don't say it didn't happen. If you know Jewish history, we don't say it didn't happen. We commemorate what did happen. We commemorate the fast days and the defeats. The rest of the world commemorates victories. We commemorate defeat. Churban Bayis, Churban Bayis Sheni, Zeres Tachvatat, the Shoah. That's what happens. That's the Morah. If you commemorate that, then you can rise to create a better world, a different world, a stronger world, and to make yourself stronger. And that's a message that I think must be communicated to the next generations, because Pesach is all about communication to the next generation. To know. So you have to know Yosef, you have to know how he got there, you have to know Matzah, you have to know more, you have to know it. Then Pesach remains the eternal holiday that it always is. I want to conclude by telling you a great Hasidic conversation between Rabbi Yitzchak Vorke and the Kotzker Rebbe, Reb Menachem Mendel Morgenstern, who were two of the great geniuses of the Jewish world, and whose wisdom spans the ages. Again, I credit my son-in-law for reading this to me, and we had a discussion about it. So the question that they raised is really a Shabbos Shuvah question, not a Shabbos hagadol question. But I think the two Shabbatot are inextricably bound. they raised is that when the Jewish people created the golden calf, they made the Egel Azov. So we saw that the Lord, to a certain extent, forgave them. It didn't result in the destruction of the people, and there was a civil war, etc. But basically, we don't find a great punishment for what they did. God said every generation that sins will pay a little of the debt, but we don't find the debt collected. But when the Jewish people refused to go to Eretz Yisrael by the Meraglim, so then we find that the Lord, so they get up the next day and they said, no, we changed our mind, we are going to Eretz Yisrael. And Moshe said, no, stay home, you're not going, it's irreversible. So why, when he came to Eretz Yisrael and Meraglim, the Rebbeinu Shalom Kaviyachol is less forgiving. It comes to the Egel and okay, so they sin, so we'll pick up the pieces and go on. That was the discussion between the Yitzchak Vorke and the Kotzker Rebbe, Menachem Mendel Morgenstern. So Rebbe Yitzchak Vorke answered as follows. A very interesting answer. He said, at the time of the Egel, the Jewish people didn't know about Tshuva. They didn't know about the Yud Gimel Midas, Hashem, Kevachu, Mechanu, Nerech Apayim, all of it comes afterwards. They didn't know that Moshe could intercede on their behalf. So therefore, they felt that they were gone. There was no possibility that they would continue. Nevertheless, they said, we're going to continue to worship God. Even though He does not forgive us, even though He is not going to be nice to us, even though we're doomed, we're going to worship Him. We realized we made a mistake. So the Rebbeinu Shalom let it pass. But when it came to Eretz Yisrael, so then they already knew about Tshuva, but they already knew, so to speak, that God forgives. You know, Heine said on his death that he said he's not afraid of confronting God because he knows God will forgive him because that's his job. So they thought that, you know, come the next day, get up and they're doing tshuva. Okay, now we will go there to Israel. That's not tshuva. Tshuva, he said, is when there's no hope. As long as you have hope that you're going to be forgiven, you're not really sorry you did it because of the fact that He'll forgive you. That was a bit from Vorke's take on it. The Kotzker over had a different take, which really applies to us. The Kotzker said, what was the sin of the Egel? They were looking for God. Nasa Lonu Elohim, let us we can't be without a God. We have to have one. You know, the Kotzker said once, he said, you know, you can be for God, you can be against God, but you can't be without God. So by the Egel, they had high aspirations. They wanted to build the utopia. They were Marxists, whatever, you know, they were going to build the better world, right? So their sin was, so to speak, a godly sin. They made a mistake. They identified it wrongly. But they were looking for their own greatness. So the Rebbeinu Shalom forgave them. Eretz Yisrael, they were looking for their comfort. They said, what are you talking about? Eretz Yisrael, it's a hard place, and you know, and there's these nations and giants, and who needs that? They're not willing to take the challenge. In his words, they're megushim. They are simply bound by their bodies and ideas and by their own wants and desires. They can't see past themselves. That is unforgivable. That can't be forgiven. So I think this Pesach we have to look past ourselves. And I think it's a good lesson that implied for all of us in all of our discomforts. And when this passes, as I said before, I'm convinced that the world and all of us will be different people. And then the question is, what do we do? How do we build ourselves? What kind of state do we build? What kind of society? I think that these are the important issues that yet face us. So I want to bless each and every one of you, my beloved friends. Again, I tell you what you mean to me. That the Lord should help and the scourge should pass from all of us, and from all of Israel, and from all of mankind. And that will be Zocher, the Chag Kosher, the Sameach, the Psuras Tevis, Yeshuos, V'nechomos. Thank you all for listening. Chag Kosher, the Sameach. Go to.
This session is no longer. This line is now on hold.